Right, so Keir Starmer met with some of his Muslim MPs yesterday, around a dozen of them, to try and find a way out of the massive hole he's dug for himself amongst the Muslim community for his blatant abuse of that Islamic centre in South Wales for his own ends, as well as his claim that Israel had a right to commit a war crime by withholding water and power from Gaza. Starmer has come across as someone supremely arrogant, despite the fallout his direct actions have caused, apparently to the point he's throwing man-baby style tantrums over it, because presumably he can't pin the blame on someone else this time and sack them. But ultimately this meeting, with another apparently scheduled for today, was a tokenistic gesture, because the main thing coming out of that first meeting, to put everything else said in the shade, was that he apparently said he will not apologise for what he said on that question of withdrawing water and power from Gaza. He has rode back on it. He has pretended he never said it or didn't mean it, but he still said it. The words came from his lips, and he's made it clear that he won't be saying sorry as a result of that. And so the resignations continue. Right, so Keir Starmer, he won't apologise, and we now apparently know that as fact, as one of the few bits of news to come out of what was largely a pointless meeting between him and some of his Muslim MPs, because actually he hasn't shifted his own position at all. If anything, he's hardened his stance. He won't be apologising. Apparently, we now have confirmation of that. He won't apologise for saying Israel has the right to withhold water and power from Gaza in the name of defending herself, despite the fact that is, in and of itself, a war crime, to match the ongoing war crime Israel is already committing there by occupying the Palestinian state. But that is the side Starmer, along with much of the West, have put themselves on. And it's a lonely place where much of the public, as protests, demonstrations and demands are showing, they're not on the side of the British people, who are overwhelmingly, finally, seeing through the lies, seeing the reality of the situation in Palestine, the driver of all the violence we've seen now and for the last several decades, the last 75 years. And it's social media that's delivered that. Where the mass media has always before been able to dictate the narrative and influence the way people think, this time that has failed. And that's quite a big deal in and of itself. But back to the matter at hand. Needless to say, though, it's alternative media delivering the information on these developments, and much of this has come courtesy of the Tribune writer and industrial correspondent Taj Ali, who put out a tweet saying, "I'm told Keir Starmer told Muslim Labour MPs at a meeting earlier today that he refuses to apologise for his remarks on LBC endorsing the collective punishment of Palestinians. One source, no movement on calling for a ceasefire, felt tokenistic and has made matters worse." Apparently Starmer told one Muslim Labour MP that the party are waiting for the US to call for a ceasefire before they endorse such a position. So not only will he not say sorry, but he's apparently waiting to take his cue from the US. What is it with this guy that he can't make decisions himself? He's not a leader. He's a puppet, and it seems being worn like a glove by the likes of Peter Mandelson isn't an exclusive thing. It seems Joe Biden is perfectly entitled to have a go as well. A US president leading a UK Labour leader by the nose. That's always ended well in the past, hasn't it? Needless to say, though, Starmer still felt he had to issue a statement saying nothing had changed. See if you can find anything new. Because I can't, not really. It reads, "It's clear the amount of aid and essential utilities getting into Gaza is completely insufficient to meet the humanitarian emergency on the ground. That's why we have repeatedly said that aid, fuel, water, electricity and medicines must be urgently ramped up, both through what can come in through the Rafah crossing and through Israel turning back on the supplies it controls. It is incumbent on all parties to make sure that aid and utilities don't just get in, but reach those who need them. That's why we've said deliveries need to be regular, fast and safe. We welcome Secretary Blinken's comments last night, and we support humanitarian pauses. In the long term, there can only be a political solution to this crisis, which is why we need to restart the hard work of talks for a two-state solution of a viable Palestinian state alongside a safe and secure Israel." I hate the way that's twice in two statements now. He said viable Palestinian state. If Israel makes sure it is unviable, what would Starmer say then? Nothing, I'm sure. He won't apologise for the political damage he's done with his very one-sided comment favouring Israel over Palestine, to the point he advocated a war crime. So if a political solution is to be found, please God, can we make sure that has nothing to do with Keir Starmer? He's clearly incapable. I noted the mention of US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken in that too, just to underline the US tail is wagging the UK Labour Party dog, or whatever that saying is. This is a guy who, in Blinken incidentally, this is a guy who has demanded the Qatari government tone down Al Jazeera's reporting of what is going on in Israel and Gaza right now. Not dissimilarly to Starmer demanding the Hansard record of what is said and done in Parliament be amended to remove a comment by his MP, Florence Eshalomi, the Shadow Minister for Democracy, no less, oh the irony of this stunt, where she called for a humanitarian ceasefire. Starmer is literally against the word ceasefire completely, to the point he proactively wanted removal of any mention of it, and is now behind a humanitarian pause. That's the language now, humanitarian pause, which seems to amount to letting aid in as long as we don't stop people shooting and killing each other whilst we're at it. Idiocy. To demonstrate the idiocy of it, Israel is now targeting Palestinian bakeries who have received flour to stop them being able to produce bread to actually feed people. That's the people Starmer is continuing to resolutely side with, of course, and stop them from shooting, because we don't want the shooting to stop. Apparently, it seems that's the message from the US and the UK. Well, the failure of Keir Starmer to meaningfully shift his position, to show some contrition to those he's offended, that has already seen 23 Labour councillors resign, that has already seen 150 Muslim councillors around the country sign an open letter demanding he call for an immediate ceasefire, as I've covered over the last several days, have continued. The 150 signatures has now grown to 250 signatures off the back of this latest failure, to show some semblance of humanity here and stop taking one side when both need to come together to find a peaceful resolution. He still hasn't even publicly acknowledged the hurt and damage he's done to the South Wales Islamic Centre either, incidentally. He got his photo op, and that's all that matters there, it seems. Resignations have continued as well, in fact. This one by Luton Councillor Wahid Akbar really does say it all. He wrote, "I've been a member of Labour Party for over 31 years. During this period I held several positions in the Labour Party that include Chair of Luton North Constituency Party for over 10 years and Chair of Luton Campaign Forum, formerly known as Luton Borough Party, for 3 years. I have served as Labour Councillor for 24 years, and during this period I have served on the Council as Executive Chair of several committees and Mayor of Luton in 2000-2001. I have decided to resign from the Labour Party due to Keir Starmer's stance on Palestine's crisis and his recent statement on the current situation. In fact, Keir Starmer has endorsed Israeli government actions unequivocally, i.e. siege of Gaza, cutting off power and water was appropriate. Keir Starmer said, I think that Israel does have that right. It is an ongoing situation. Obviously everything should be done within international law, but I don't want to step away from the core principles that Israel has a right to defend herself. I think Keir Starmer's statement is very disturbing, and he has endorsed illegal actions of Israeli government. I cannot associate with the party whose leader is so biased and has no regard to human rights, as to date over 5,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed, of whom 62% are children and women. I condemn the acts of violence and the targeting of innocent civilians. I also condemn the crime of collective punishment that has led to the deliberate denial of basic human necessities such as food, water, electricity and medicines to an already desperate civilian population. I condemn Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, for his statements on the current issue on Palestine. In fact, Keir Starmer is the worst leader of the Labour Party since I joined 31 years ago. I also urge my ex-colleagues and Labour councillors on Luton Council to speak up for human rights, justice and peace, as this is a time people need your help and support." That's scathing. And on top of that, there are apparently 4 shadow ministers on resignation watch now over all of this. Not necessarily Muslim ones either, such as the disgust and discomfort they have with their tantrum-throwing Zionist without qualification leader. I don't quite know what is taking more of them longer though. How many of them resigned on the hour every hour for fear of a socialist leader gaining traction, a guy who has been outspoken in his actual support for a two-state solution of late, compared to Starmer, the unapologetic war crime backer? Labour in opposition, you want to be opposing Tory positions, not be on exactly the same page as them, especially over something like this, because that is where we're at. That is where we are. The reason the fallout is so much worse in Labour is because the leadership acting like this is completely out of step with the membership. 89% of Labour members right now want a ceasefire, and Starmer won't even let the word stand on the parliamentary record, let alone listen to that. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Please do have your say on this story in the comments below and be part of this conversation as well. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation where the fallout from that Muslim community centre visit has continued to batter Starmer too. All he has to say is sorry and hold his hands up, but apparently that sort of behaviour is only for us mere mortals. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.